we're going to actually talk about doing our apple. Now this is an applique, and the first thing that it's going to do is stitch an outline stitch. And this is going to tell me where to put the applique fabric on. Yeah. So on this model, if I just hit the green button, it is now going to do the placement line. Now, one of the things that I love about the Berninas is that it'll stop and let you trim your thread. If you leave your threads long here, they can get caught in your foot. So I'm now changing my thread to the appropriate applique thread. In this case, I'm using red. Cut your long thread. Now I've put a little bit of 505 on the back piece of my applique, just so it sticks down. Some people like to use tape, or you can do a basting box around it. Again, pauses. Now this is an option that we set on. So it is now stitched down our applique fabric. Our next step is going to be to cut around our applique fabric. Now, depending on who does digitizing, sometimes you have to be very close to your stitching, but not cut it, or you can be about an 1/8 inch away. Now, to cut this, don't hold it up in the air. You need to put your hoop flat on the table. So the best way to do this is to hold up your fabric, and I put a little bit of tautness to it, and using appropriate scissors, and cut around your stitching. And by lifting it up, you're not going to cut your main fabric or your background fabric. Turn your hoop frequently. Don't try to go around this way. It just makes it more difficult and mistakes will happen. Just trim a little bit right there. I want to make sure that you don't have any ragged edges. Again, this is why you want really good tools. And if you're going to do embroidery, the OESD tools are some of the best on the market. Okay, so I've now trimmed around my applique. I'm going to bring it back to the machine. This is telling me I'm on the 3rd step of my design. I can actually arrow through, so this is going to be the satin stitch. I'm on step 4, and 5 is the stem, or I can go back 4, 3, and that was tacking down my applique fabric, and this was the placement line. So it's quite easy to jump through what I call our sections. So let's go ahead and do this one. So when you're doing embroidery, there are what we call underlaying stitches. So in order to do a very nice satin stitch in embroidery, your machine will do a number of stitches underneath. In this case, it's a very large zigzag, and it provides the loft for your embroidery stitches to sit on top. That's what gives it that beautiful luster and that beautiful three-dimensional effect. So it's just finished doing the zigzag. Now, as you can see on my screen, number 4 is going to be the satin stitch. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go through a little bit, and I'm going to cut my thread, and I'm going to show you how to restart. There, I have cut my thread on purpose because I want to show you how to restart your machine. This happens, the bobbin runs out, your top thread snaps. This always happens. So how are we going to do this? First thing I want to do is put my foot up. Never thread your machine with your foot down because the tension discs are closed and you'll never get your thread through it. So let's rethread our machine. So one of the important things is that my top thread was cut, but my bobbin thread is still attached. Let's just go ahead and cut my bobbin thread before I thread my needle. So it's showing me in detail the stitches I want to do. I need to go back, and I tend to like going back 10 stitches. For me, that's kind of a safe. So I'm going to use my top dial, and I'm going to turn counterclockwise, and you'll watch this is going back. And it's also telling me that I've gone back 10 stitches. Now I'm ready to go again. Okay, we're now going to change it to the brown thread. Again, cutting your thread on top, going it through. Now this satin stitch on the side, it's fairly dense, so you would want to use a medium weight stabilizer with that, just because of the density of the stitches. Again, go to embroideryonline.com. And the chart there from OESD will give you some suggestions of what you should use for a stabilizer. It can be quite overwhelming when you first start embroidery. What stabilizer do I use? That will give you a guideline on how to start. Now there's one other little tip I want to show you. As you can see, I need to thread my needle, but a lot of times your hoop is in the way. If you press on the hoop, scroll, we have, I call them parking. I'm sure that the Swiss have a different name for it. But I can actually move my hoop, moves the hoop out of the way so I can actually thread my needle. Now it wants me to do the burp. Now I have clear margin to thread my needle. And it will pick up on this one. So let's go ahead. Looks like I have some thread caught in my bobbin, so let's just pop the bobbin out here. Time for some troubleshooting. Let's take the plate off, and I can see I have some red caught into my cutter. So I'm going to take my tweezers, and work that out. When you're embroidering, you want to make sure that your bobbin area is clean, that you oil it before starting. Just keep your machine in top running shape here. Sometimes you have to take the bobbin case out. It may make it a little easier to get that thread out. There we go. So I just worked that little piece of thread. It was actually cut around a piece of the bobbin there. Okay. So let's put our bobbin in. So we want to put our hoop back to where it should be. Now, because I had it parked outside, I just parked it back in. And I should be ready to go. We have done our first applique. And now you can clean up the back. Here's my applique. I'm just going to just tear it. Now it's totally up to you if you want to take this out. It will dissolve if you are in water. If you had to wash this, say this had to be a block in a quilt or on a t-shirt or whatever. But it's totally up to you. And you've done your first piece of applique.